Of all the monsters in the myth, she is the ultimate victim turned villain. A woman cursed for a crime committed against her, whose very gaze turns men to stone. But what if the greatest artists saw past the petrifying terror and into her profound agony? This is Peter Paul Rubens' Medusa's head, and it is not a heroic slaying or a monstrous trophy. It is a seismic event captured at the moment of death, a writhing, visceral nightmare of snakes, blood, and astonishing beauty. A masterpiece where horror and pity collide. Join me as we stare into the gorgon's dying eyes, unravel the shocking techniques Rubens used to make a canvas bleed, and discover why this might be one of the most psychologically complex and brutally honest paintings of the entire Baroque era. This is more than a myth. This is a meditation on violence, transformation, and the terrible cost of a curse. To understand the impact of Rubens's Medusa's head, we must first look, unflinchingly, at what he actually painted. This is not a symbolic or stylized monster. It is a meticulously constructed image of biological chaos, frozen at the precise moment of death. The painting's focal point is Medusa's severed head, depicted with a startling and forensic realism. Her face is not that of a grotesque fiend, but of a young woman in the final seconds of life. The skin has taken on a pallid, greenish-gray hue, signaling the cessation of blood flow. Her mouth hangs slightly open in a slack gasp, a detail that suggests the last breath escaping rather than a scream. Most arresting are her eyes. They are rolled back, their pupils clouding over, capturing the exact transition from seeing sight to lifeless orb. This nuanced portrayal complicates the myth, introducing a palpable sense of a life violently ended. Radiating from her head is a seething mass of snakes. Rubens, a master of depicting dynamic movement, paints each serpent as a distinct creature. They are not a decorative halo, but a tangled knot of agonized life. Some coil tightly upon themselves, mouths agape in silent hisses. Others twist outward, as if still reacting to the fatal blow. The variation in their scales, colors, and positions demonstrates Rubens's profound study of nature, transforming a mythological attribute into a believable, writhing ecosystem. The horror is amplified by Rubens's virtuosic handling of the painting's grisly ancillary elements. Bright, arterial blood streams from the severed neck, its vivid crimson cutting through the gloomy shadows. A classic Baroque technique using tenebrism, dramatic light and shadow, for maximum visceral impact. This pool of life spills onto the rocky ground, where it mingles with a menagerie of creatures. Lizards skitter, a spider crouches, and a scorpion lurks. Art historians note that these are not random additions. They are carefully observed specimens consistent with the period's interest in natural history. The background is a profound darkness, a cavernous void from which this nightmarish still life has emerged, focusing all the viewer's attention on the intricate, terrible beauty of death and decay. In this section, Rubens masterfully combines the genres of history painting, portraiture, and still life. Every element, from the fading human face to the livid snakes and the spilling blood, is presented with an almost scientific objectivity. The power lies not in an invented narrative, but in the overwhelming, factual detail of the scene itself, inviting a reaction that is as much about awe for the artist's skill as it is about recoil from the subject. To understand the philosophical depth Rubens brought to this grisly subject, we can turn to the words of the ancient philosopher Aristotle, who, in defining the purpose of tragic drama, wrote, "Tragedy is an imitation of an action that is serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude. through pity and fear affecting the proper purgation of these emotions. While Aristotle was analyzing theater, his framework provides a precise and illuminating lens for Rubens's Medusa's head. The painting operates as a visual tragedy, meticulously engineered to evoke the very same pity and fear to achieve a powerful, contemplative effect, a catharsis. We can apply this principle factually to the painting's composition. The fear is evoked through the objective, terrifying elements of the myth: the decapitation, the writhing snakes, and the visceral, shadowy atmosphere. These are the serious and complete actions of the story's violent climax. The profound innovation lies in how Rubens simultaneously elicits pity. This is achieved not through narrative, but through his humanizing, naturalistic technique. By painting Medusa's face with the slack-jawed, ashen pallor of a real corpse, he shifts her from a monstrous abstraction into a specific, tragic victim. Her dying, clouded gaze is not petrifying, but petrified, an end. This factual artistic choice forces the viewer into a complex emotional position. We are confronted with the horror of the act, yet simultaneously invited to contemplate the suffering of the subject. Rubens, a classically educated scholar, would have been intimately familiar with Aristotelian philosophy. In creating this work for a learned collector's Kunstkammer, he was likely engaging with these very ideas, using supreme artistic skill to stage a mythological horror not for mere shock, but as a means of provoking a profound, reflective experience. The painting becomes a vessel for exploring the dual human responses to violence, our instinctive recoil and our capacity for compassion. In doing so, it transcends its subject matter to fulfill Aristotle's ancient criterion, achieving a purgation of emotion through its masterful balance of terror and tragic empathy. To fully comprehend why Rubens created such a philosophically charged and viscerally detailed work, we must place it within the specific context of his career and the intellectual currents of the early 17th century. Peter Paul Rubens was not merely a painter. He was a diplomat, a classical scholar, and the master of Europe's most prolific artistic workshop in Antwerp. His clientele included kings, dukes, and wealthy merchants, and his works ranged from grand altarpieces and diplomatic portraits to private scholarly pursuits. Medusa's head belongs firmly to the latter category. It was almost certainly created for a Kunstkammer, a cabinet of curiosities. These were encyclopedic collections assembled by wealthy nobles and scholars, intended to represent a microcosm of the world. A Kunstkammer housed natural specimens, shells, fossils, corals, scientific instruments, antiquities, and works of art, all curated to inspire wonder and intellectual reflection on the marvels of nature, natura, and human artistry, ARs. Within this setting, Rubens's painting served multiple factual purposes: as a demonstration of artistic virtuosity that could rival nature itself, as a conversation piece on classical mythology, and as a memento mori, prompting contemplation of life, death, and transformation. Rubens's approach was deeply informed by direct study. He was profoundly influenced by his time in Italy, where he would have encountered the famed marble Medusa Rondinini, a Hellenistic sculpture admired for its beautiful yet tragic depiction of the gorgon. More directly, art historians note that Rubens made a careful drawn copy after a lost Medusa design attributed to Leonardo da Vinci, a study in grotesque invention and psychological intensity. Rubens's painting is thus a deliberate Baroque synthesis, merging Leonardo's inventive terror with classical sculpture's idealized pathos, all rendered with his own unparalleled vigor and naturalism. Furthermore, the painting reflects the period's burgeoning scientific curiosity. The meticulously observed snakes, lizards, and insects are not merely symbols of evil. They are specimens, painted with the same sharp eye a naturalist would apply to a study page. This aligns with the empirical spirit of the age, where art and science were not yet separate disciplines, but complementary ways of investigating and representing the natural world. For the learned viewer in a Kunstkammer, the painting was as much a testament to the artist's power to imitate creation as it was a mythological scene. Having established the painting's intellectual and physical context, we must now ask, why did this particular myth resonate so powerfully with Rubens and his sophisticated audience? To answer this, we must look at the standard version of the myth, primarily drawn from the Roman poet Ovid's Metamorphoses, and examine how its themes aligned with core Baroque sensibilities. In Ovid's telling, Medusa was once a beautiful maiden, a priestess of Athena. She was assaulted by the god Poseidon in Athena's temple. Instead of receiving justice, Athena punished Medusa, transforming her beautiful hair into living snakes and cursing her with a petrifying gaze. This narrative framed Medusa not as a primordial monster, but as a tragic victim, a figure whose beauty was violently taken from her and replaced with a power that isolated and doomed her. This version of the myth, which Rubens as a classical scholar would have known intimately, provides the crucial subtext of victimhood and unjust transformation that underlies the painting's pathos. This story found fertile ground in the Baroque era for several specific factual reasons. Drama and theatricality. The Baroque period prized intense emotional engagement and dramatic impact. The myth of Medusa offered a perfect subject for this. A single, frozen moment of supreme violence and metamorphosis, the instant of decapitation that could be exploited for maximum visual and emotional effect. Exploration of extreme states. Baroque artists were fascinated by depicting extreme human conditions: ecstasy, martyrdom, agony, and horror. Medusa's story, culminating in her violent death and the perpetuation of her curse through her severed head, allowed for a deep exploration of terror, pain, and the grotesque. It was a subject that demanded a visceral response from the viewer. Memento mori and the macabre. A persistent theme in 17th century art was the memento mori, a reminder of the inevitability of death and the transience of earthly things. Rubens's hyper-realistic depiction of a decaying head, complete with emerging pallor and coagulating blood, serves this function powerfully. It is a stark, scientific, and terrifyingly beautiful reminder of mortality. The power and paradox of sight. The Baroque was deeply concerned with optics, illusion, and the act of seeing. Medusa's myth is fundamentally about sight, a gaze that petrifies. Rubens ingeniously reverses this dynamic. We, the viewers, are safe to gaze upon her. The power relation is inverted. We scrutinize her death without fear of punishment, forcing a contemplation of violence, beauty, and pity from a position of privileged observation. Therefore, Rubens's Medusa's head can be factually understood as a masterful fusion of these Baroque preoccupations. It takes Ovid's tragic victim and renders her story through the era's love of drama, its scientific curiosity about death, and its philosophical wrestling with violence and perception. The painting is not a simple illustration of a monster, but a complex, culturally specific artifact that used a classical myth to probe the very boundaries of art, nature, and human emotion. Rubens's Medusa's head achieves its enduring power through a precise fusion of craft, intellect, and cultural moment. It is a work of layered, factual genius, a masterclass in Baroque realism that renders horror with unsettling vitality. A scholar's synthesis of classical myth and scientific observation for the Kunstkammer, and a profound engagement with the era's preoccupations with tragedy, mortality, and the act of seeing itself. The painting's true force lies in this synthesis. It offers no simple moral, but holds the viewer in a state of powerful contradiction, compelled by sublime artistry to contemplate a brutal subject. Rubens transformed a moment of mythic death into an immortal exploration of the tensions between terror and pity, beauty and decay, life and art. In the end, we do not just see Medusa's head. We are invited to contemplate the very nature of looking and the complex humanity that can be found even in a monster's final gaze. If this deep dive into Rubens's masterpiece left you contemplating the line between horror and art, be sure to subscribe for more explorations that dissect the stories behind history's most compelling images. If the balance of terror and tragedy in this painting resonated with you, let the channel know by smashing that like button. And finally, I'm curious to hear your gaze. In the comments, tell me, does this painting make you feel more pity or more fear? You can bring a piece of this artistic paradox into your own space. Visit the collection on Fine Art America in the description below, where you can find Medusa's head and other masterpieces transformed into prints, canvases, and more. A perfect Kunstkammer piece for the modern viewer.